So the request was some of your teachers tried to so, probably all have heard of Sheikh Muhammad Ali Sabuni. The Sheikh Sabuni was, of course, he was a great scholar from Halab, but he lived in Mecca for a long time. Fortunately, at the end of his life, he was, by course of circumstances, he found himself having to leave, going to Turkey, recently passed away. Must have been very old. I don't know exactly how old he was. When we were with him, decades ago, he was still having predominantly a white beard, but quite active. So, a lot to be said about him, but I'll just mention one thing that, interestingly, you're talking about what yani bil ibadat. So there was another friend of mine and colleague, you could say. At that time, he was a graduate student in Farad. Sheikh, must be Dr. Muhammad Tahir Patani. There's a famous book, Mujmal al-Bihar, Al-Gharib al-Hadith, very important book of Patani. That was his great ancestor, whatever. Yeah. So, in any case, so he was a graduate student, but also a student of Sheikh Sabuni. And so every day in Haram, between Maghrib and Isha, daily, every day. I mean, if the sun was up, then you would see these two. Sheikh would read, and Sheikh Muhammad Tahir used to listen, Samia, between Maghrib and Isha. Maghrib, Isha. Every day. It wasn't like, it was all just, academics, and it was very. Now, what he would be doing in the night, which we didn't see him, all that. We had the former Sheikh al-Qurra of Pakistan, and it's actually from India, Sheikh Patti Muhammad. Panipatti, you heard the Panipatti method of Qira'ah? You remember that?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, in India there was a famous sort of method of recitation. Panipat is a place in India. So they were called Panipattis. I said, well, I'm a dude. But these fellows, so Qari Fati Muhammad, we've all heard, this hadith, Ahlul Quran, Ahlullah wa khasatuhu. People of Quran are the people of Allah, the family of Allah. Qari Fati Muhammad, Abdul Rahman, by the way, has a vest that actually Qari gave to me. And after some time it vanished. Finds out that Abdul Rahman snatched it. But he's actually the one that deserves it. So he has it to this day. So Qari Fati Muhammad, this fellow was Sheikh al-Qurra. He was, he was a great scholar. He was Shaykh al-Qurra, Qiraat al-Ashar, and Arbat Ashar. And I saw him in Haram, in Medina. He would have Qurra around him, and they would be reciting various qira'ats. And he was blind, by the way. He was blind, he was in wheelchair, and he weighed about 60 pounds, I think. He was skin and bones, Simon Dahar. He would never break his fast unless he had to, days of Eid. Otherwise, he was fasting. And so I saw him all these Qur'an reading to him, and he would, be listening. He'd be hearing all these different qira'ats, and he'd be correcting these people. And the Ashra qira'at is 2 riwayats for the qira'at, so 20 qira'at. Okay. masters. They don't make mistakes. So if you wanted to meet Qari Sahib, and he wasn't teaching Quran, it wasn't, and then he would be reading Quran. So if it wasn't makruh time, he would be in nafil salah. Just continues. If you wanted to meet him, you would sit on this side, on the left side. So when he would say salam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, there you go. Yeah. Now, one of my satis in Dars in Haram, Qari Abdul Malik. Qari Abdul Malik, I think it's but so Qari Abdul Malik was the khas khadim of Qari Fatima in Safar and Hajj. By the way, this guy, when he came from Multan. In those days in Haram, in Makkah, you had all these, Quran teachers in the Haram. It used to be full of these Quran teachers. They were all from Multan. They were all from Pakistan. So, and actually, Khalid ibn Muhammad had been there. So he had students there. And Abdurrahman and Ibrahim and Suleiman, all their teachers were the students of Khalid. And these guys were Daraba Yadribu Darban. I mean, they would really be ruthless, but they would love you like more than your mother and father, but they'd be tougher on you than, Al-Hajjaj. But they're phenomenal. And these people, their life was Quran. That's all they did. That's all they did. That's all they knew. That's all they were engaged in. That's all they talk about. Quran. Unbelievable. If you ask me to teach Bukhari, so I did that a long time. So I can do that. Alhamdulillah. Ask me to teach Quran, I couldn't do that for a day. That is a tough job. And these people, their whole life, from the time they finished Hifz until the day they died, that's what they do. Okay. So Qadi Abdul Malik, he was the special khadim of Qadi Fatima. So he said, this guy, as we saw, I mean, I wasn't with him a lot, but we used to see him during, but he was with him all the time. And this fellow was always in Qira'ah. In his sleep, you'd see him sleeping and his lips were moving. And sometimes an ayat would come out. Even in his sleep, this guy's reading Quran. And if you would have seen this individual, I mean, when you read this hadith, where you see, where the Prophet, there's Sahabis saying, I'm looking at the face of the Prophet, I'm looking at the moon, which is more bright. Body himself was like that. It's glowing. And the fellow was just skin and bones. He was just emaciated. So that's Qari Fatih Muhammad, that's Shaykh Ali Muhammad Ali Salbuni. Okay, my main teacher from in Haram, who I studied Hanafi fiqh and usul and all this stuff, was a fellow by the name of Mufti Azizur Rahman. Mufti Azizur Rahman was a Pathan from Ugi, which is a place in the mountains of Pakistan. But he was Mujawar of Makkah since. And in those days, we used to have in Makkah, there was this rawabit with these old houses where there would be awqaf. And you'd have all these darawish, Allah-walas, living in there, Sufis and ulama, just ajaib al-makhluqat, you would see. So, Mufti Sahib lived in one of these ribats. And there was a madrasa on top of a mountain outside of Makkah, up in the Akhir al-Misfala, that the Burmese, these people from Burma, after there was the communist takeover in Burma. So these people who are millionaires, the next day, their money and toilet paper was the same. So just canceled it. These people became paupers. Anyway, so a lot of people had to leave from Burma, and many of them came there to Makkah. And they were not Saudis, and they weren't Burmese, and they had no nationality, and they lived in these places in the end of Misfala. I don't know if it's still there or not, but this was a couple years ago. So they live in these tin shacks. Can you imagine 50-degree 50-degree weather, I mean, centigrade, I'm talking about, 110, 120 degrees, living in a tin shack, like an oven, literally. No electricity, no running water, no anything. They're living. There was a madrasa in there. Like, used to walk from this place, and he would, go to the madrasa and come back and study with him in the afternoons and the evening. And when it would come time for Hajj, so we would go with Mufti Sahib. So the first time we went, okay, what about Arafat? Now those days, it's not like Hajj now. You got these, it's like 7-star Hajj. Wherever you go, you got all the facility they see. And no, when I first came to Saudi Arabia, 1971. So Mina there was nothing in it. There was nothing. Period. There was a little pathway. Like you see the walking trail in there was a little pathway up to the Jamarat. Jamarat were about this big. There's a little stone wall around, and the Jamarat was about this big. You go and you walk along. And there was a dirt road that used to go in the middle of Mina. And on the two sides, you'd have some tents. And the rest of the Mina was just open. Nothing. And then the Bedouins used to come and they would bring their animals, slaughter your animals up there. So when we had set up, so there's no arrangement for, if you don't make an arrangement, you don't have any. Because there's nothing out there. There's nothing in Arafat, there's nothing in Mina, there's nothing in Muzdalifah, nothing. So Mufti Saab, he just takes a change of clothes. Okay. So walking. No bus, no walk. Walk to Mina. We say, so what are we going to do in Mina? Where are we going to stay? He said, whose guests are we? Well, those guests. What do you want? Did you ever hear of a host that's not going to treat his guests well? And what do you think about Allah? He's not going to treat his guests well. There we go. Walk to Mina, and walk to Arafat, and then walk back. And everywhere you go, subhanAllah, out of nowhere. And Pathans, they have to have tea every time. Yeah. And where are you going to get tea? Where are you going to find a place to sleep? And everything just out of nowhere became available. The most comfortable Hajj I've ever had was with that. So we learned these things, tawakkul, sabr, all these. We didn't learn them out of a book. We saw people who actually did these things. So that's some stories of the so anyway, I'm kind of losing steam, folks. So next time.
Just one question.
Yeah.
There's a rumor that you had met Sheikh bin Baz.
It's a rumor.
Yeah. And then in addition to that, that he had sent you to Pakistan.
He facilitated. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I first met Sheikh bin Baz when he was the rector of Medina. He used to be the principal in the university of Medina. And it was about this big in the middle of the desert outside of the Medina. There was nothing around there. This is an interesting thing you mentioned that. So when I came from Hajj, I came on the boat from Yemen. There was a great Shaykh also. We would talk about him, but Shaykh Abdul Majid is in Dani. Have you ever heard of him? Great scholar. He was reading that. He also died in Turkey. That seems to be the Ma'wa of ulama.
Still is.
Sheikh Awama is there. Pass away. Anyway, so my plan was after Hajj, I want to go and stay in Medina and study there in Medina. So I went to Medina, and Sheikh was actually the rector. So when I came, I said, yeah. The thing is, what you have to do is you have this visa for Hajj. So what you do is after Hajj is over, so you go to the king and tell him, look, I need to get this change. And so when he has his majlis, you go there and you take care of it. That's how the king. It was like Sheikh al-Qabila.
Right.
Faisal. It was during the time of Faisal. No, actually, I got very sick and I ended up with pneumonia and hepatitis and abscessed liver, which broke and my lung collapsed. And it was pretty much a
This
mess.
is after coming to Medina.
After Medina, after I started getting sick in Medina, and then I went back, going back to Mecca and to Jeddah, and then I just came back out there. I was 3 months in the hospital, which, it was like a bomb shelter that got bombed. It was pretty, pretty rustic, and they couldn't do any kind of real, you know, operations or anything. So I had this collapsed lung that I needed to use off. So I had to ultimately leave. So I couldn't actually, stay on at that time. I had to go back. So I went back to America. Another 3 months in UCLA hospital as a teaching patient. I didn't have the money. So they said, well, he's an interesting case. So thank you, man. And then after I got out of the hospital, then I took a class in Arabic, classical Arabic, taught by an Italian guy. The guy was amazing. Oh, man. One of the most knowledgeable persons of Nahu and Sarf and Balagha afterwards. But he was a Muslim. And then after a year of that, then I used to actually, so I would go to the university of the class. I just had this Arabic class, that's all. And then I used to go and I do odd jobs. I was the housekeeper for some lady dress designer, Beverly Hills. So I go there and cook and clean her house and then, go to school, and go take my class with the idea to go back to Medina. And so after that year was over, then I was headed back to Medina, and then I stopped in New York. Uh, I had met another, revert Muslim, former Black Panther. It was in Medina, and so he had studied for a couple of years there. So he had gone back to New York. So I wanted to meet this guy and then carry on. And so I ran into these Tablighi guys. But, I ended up going with them for the next 4 months. And then went to India and Bangladesh, came back, ultimately got married, 3, 4 kids, then back in. I wasn't able to actually go back until 1978. So then in Makkah, so after I graduated, so I was during that time also I used to go to Pakistan also in Jamaat. So the people in Ben Nuri town, they said, why don't you come and yeah, why don't you come and join us here? We had in those days all the foreigners used to go to Pakistan and India, and there wasn't really any other option. There wasn't Madaris, there was in South Africa or any of these other places. So all these people would come to India or Pakistan. We had people from all over the world. So they used to teach them, you go there and then first they teach you Urdu and then they teach you Farsi and then they teach you Arabic grammar in Persian language explained in Urdu. And wow, I said, hey guys, why don't we just, teach these foreigners in Arabic? What are you talking about? But ultimately, they agreed, and so the next year we actually started that program, which is still going on. Not only that, but all the other big madaris, they also kind of followed that model to give it to foreigners, to teaching directly. And that's why to this day I'm not proficient in Urdu, because again, I've always been engaged in whatever I did in Arabic. So then actually after graduating and all that, so the Benuri people want me to come. So how do we facilitate that? So Sheikh bin Baz, he had this, it was a funny thing. And by the way, I was mentioning to some of the other students, so this, because, the Hanafis, and the Sufis here, these kind of names, I think these guys are the enemies of,
This is why I brought it up.
Kalla, Hasha wa Kalla. Maulana Sayyid Ahmed Khan, our Shaykh, right? They were best friends. I mean, the Shaykh loved Tabligh. He loved these Tabligh guys. Yeah, and he used to give fatwas. I have a whole collection of his fatwas against the edict of the government. Yeah, these guys, yeah, great stuff. And he was just really, these old Nejdis, the original people, amazing people of taqwa, tawakkul, sakhawa, shuja. Sheikh bin Baz wasn't afraid of anybody, but he loved everybody. If you had any kind of need, you just come to him. And if he could help you out, he would do whatever he could do. He would, whoever you were, would ask who you were, what's your mother, where you can I, you know. Yeah, if he didn't agree with something, he'd let you know about that. He'd give his opinion. That's it. You know. But we used to also call him Al Walid. He was known as Al Walid. And that's exactly what it was. He was like the father of everybody, all Talabat al-Ilm, anywhere they were, wherever they were, So he had this thing where, they had the official Saudi government used to send people as teachers and duat all over the place. But then he had his own special thing. He had his own circle of muhsinin that he would, facilitate people to go here and there and make a stipend for them. So actually, there was a stipend of 500 reals per month.
That's pretty good.
500 reals.
I don't know. Back then.
It's about $150.
Never mind.
With a family. Okay, whatever. And and he used to, and what they would do with in the agreement, I still have this. It's amazing. It was written in the old-fashioned types of pens. The kind you whittle it down and write, and then you used to have his stamp. Like the Sunnah stamp that is stamped out. Now the interesting thing was, he said, "Inshallah, tawakkal, kuntu mubarakan haythu." He used to always tell people, "Well, kuntu mubarakan haythu ma kunt." Okay, خلاص. So I go to Pakistan. Month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months goes by. I don't hear anything. And it's not like, okay, if anything happens, this is the number and this is a connection. Just who do we contact? We do. Okay. So then, nothing happens. No stipend comes, no anything comes. It goes on for months and actually for a year or two. And I had to, start doing stuff, whatever I could do. Then after a year or so, I get this letter from Islamabad, from the Maktab al-Da'wah, from the Saudi embassy, that all the du'at are requested to come to Islamabad and what do I got to do with you guys, So then I came, anyway, I decided I should show up. So I came there and the director, that was a young guy, Saudi guy, nice guy. So then I told him, I said, he said, we haven't heard from you. I said, well, I haven't heard from you anyway. I haven't heard anything. I know there's the ratib I'm supposed to get. It never came. What? Never came. So come to find out, a secretary, the guy that was, in the administration, he was pocketing all that. Yeah. Right? Not only that, 1 month came, and because they got people all over Pakistan that they're giving these stipends to. Some of them were like us, they called them Ahl al-Bayt. So we were like from the house of the Shaykh, Bayt al-Shaykh. And then you had the official people who were, the actually government sponsored. And so this guy had actually 1 month, all the salaries of all these people, scores of them. So they nabbed him. But in the meantime, and he was doing a doctorate degree there in Pakistan. So by this time, he had taken, and he finished his tenure there, and he finished his degree also, and so he went back to Saudi Arabia. And he got back to Saudi Arabia and he died. So then, and then another interesting thing about that whole situation was, so in Pakistan we had this organization where we used to meet every month. And it was an organization of all those, all of the ulama who had graduated from Saudi universities. So you had Deobandis, you had the Salafis, you had whoever, but we all used to meet, monthly, and we all had a very tight bond. I mean, it was really wonderful. And I mean, this concept, Salafi and Hanafi and Sufi, Bainu Mahaj and no. So we had differences of opinion on things, but so what, So we used to gather every month, and I remember the elder of us, and actually the madrasa that we used to meet at was called Madrasa As-Sattariya, and they come from the lineage of those old Al Hadith ulama from Delhi. You know. So the Sheikh Muhammad As-Salafi, in fact, that was his name, Muhammad As-Salafi. He was the main guy. He was the eldest of us, and he was a wonderful person. Really great guy. So we used to meet every month, and then issues that we needed to voice as a body, we would discuss things and issue our opinion on various things. So I remember one time that there was some big fitna going on. I think it was during the time of Benazir Bhutto, whatever. And so Sheikh al-Salafi was saying, the problem today is we don't have those shakhsiyat that everybody, will look to and, agree with and see as their figure, like Sheikh Muhammad Yusuf bin Nouri, Sheikh Malani Ihtisham al-Haq Tanwi. These are all Hanafis. This guy's, the Zaim of Salafi of Karachi. So that idea, forget that. That's not on. Ulama, that's not the case of ulama. Juhala, yeah, they have this, word your enemy. These are mashahid, these are madahib, these are mashahid. This is not from, yesterday. These are ongoing things. And we find very staunch differences among Sahaba. Aisha radiallahu anha says, Kadabat ibn Abbas. Kadabat ibn Abbas. And she doesn't mean he's telling an outright lie. In other words, akhta. In the Masala, did the Rasul see Allah? Al-Ra Rabbu. Yeah. So she says, yeah, he's wrong. So now did they, form a group, the Ru'yat group and a non-Ru'yat group, and, let's have a hizb, let's have this munazara, let's have a podcast, Halas. She said her opinion, he said his opinion, and they went on loving each other and respecting each other. So that's a very important lessons for us, And this is one of the beauties of this ummah. We have various opinions, but it's all within the framework. Everyone is going to quote Kitab and Sunnah, but they see it from a different perspective, from a different lens. So fine. As long as you're within that's fine. We don't have to agree with you, but we accept you. We accept the fact that you have the authority to speak what you have to speak. So, Jazakumullah khair, barakallahu feekum. So before I conk out altogether, I'm down to about 2 on the battery.
And then Jazakallah khair.
So, Jazakumullah khair, barakallahu feekum. May Allah bless you all and make you all actually قرة عين رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Barakallahu feekum.
Let's take it right.
Well, I'm
Oh, sorry.